Hey Marcelo, how's it going? I'm prepping the board for something, or de-prepping it. I got part of the functionality working for the transmitter. Still trying to figure out how to get the it to power the actual module. So I might have to troubleshoot that later tonight. So tonight's just going to be some simple troubleshooting, hopefully, but I never know. Might switch up the boards a couple times, depending upon how tired I get. Let's see, minute and a half. Yeah, I haven't been live that often lately. That reminds me, I've got to check my channel real quick here. And hopefully everything else is set up. Just got to get the screens right. In 55 seconds. Looks like I got it right. And get some juice. If you guys have questions, post them in the chat and I'll check those first before I start something. Got about 6 seconds. Here we go. Okay, today we might do some interesting stuff depending upon how well it works out. But there's a lot of different questions on different boards, so let me see what's in the actual chat. Eventually I'm going to build Veron, as long as I can get caught up on other stuff. But when are you shipping out to South America? Let me break out the chat so I can see it in a different way here. But today I want to talk about some issues that people have been experiencing, but I need to figure out something in Restream real quick here. Let's see. They usually have a drop down. Chat. Oh, there it is. Okay, now I can see the browser better. So we got about 4 people in here. So I know there were some questions regarding steppers, also the hot end, and issues that you can normally see. Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of paperwork to work on for the trip. So, looking at the board today, obviously I posted a video on how to do fans the other day. And there's going to be a new one on how to do the Ys. But I was thinking about doing something. If you guys have another idea, let me know. But say you want duplicate Z, then Ys, then X's. So we're going to do X and Y and see what happens on here for dual steppers. This might be interesting or it might be a total mess. But essentially, On this drive, it's designed for the Veyron. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me bring you over to the desktop. On the desktop, we have Visual Studios. If we open up a downloaded and extracted copy of Marlin, which is first Marlin folder, second Marlin folder, select folder, there's going to be some issues that you might run into with this particular board. So we're going to go to the Marlin folder, the source folder, then we're going to go to the pins folder, and we're going to find our chipset, which is STM32F4. And then inside of here, there is a Big Tree Tech Octopus Pro. I've showed this before. This is actually the pin modifier for a pin inside this file being common. So if we go to common, we can see all the pins. And one of the issues that goes on this particular board is that you have dual Y specified, or excuse me, dual Z specified right here. And when you do dual Y, you have to say, okay, well, I'm using Y, so it's not going to use E0, but it's going to use E1, which is motor 5. But what happens if you want to do dual X and dual Y? What's going to happen down in here? Is it going to be motor 5 and then motor 6? And then if we were to do all three as dual, what would happen? So I only have 4 steppers to work with, so I'm going to do X and Y to show you this. And they're going to be TMC 2209s, or excuse me, 2208s, but they're actually 2225s, which are the same as 2208s, essentially. So let me check on the chat before I really get rolling on this. So what we're going to do is have to go over to the board and set up the actual functionality as we think it may be. So on the board, as you can see here, we have X, Y, Z, Z2, E0, 1, 2, and 3 for the extruders. So we're going to be eating into the extruders. So we have to set the pins correctly for UART. And UART involves popping out these to put them in the right connection. Notice how everything's disconnected power-wise from the board. So if I were to go over to the Marlin website, you can see that we can pull up the manual. So right now, Marlin, this is the current version I'm working with, but we're actually going to the Big Tree Tech website, and it's Big Tree Tech Octopus version 1.1, but we're using the actual Pro. So we go to repositories, then we type Octopus, and we spell it correctly, hopefully. And we click on the Pro. So what we're interested in is the English manual in this case. So if we scroll down through here, there's going to be a setting for UART down near the bottom. So let's see what we got here. Okay, so this is step dir, so this would be like a TMC 20, or I'm sorry, like a A4988 or DRV 8825. Then our TMCs would be in here for UART, because the 2225 will be UART, and that's the jumper position. So we have X, Y, or motor 1, 2. Then we have Z1, Z2, E0, and then we count across to the one that's all the way out to here probably. So let's set that up. So we'll go back to the workbench, and we're going to guess what they are because it may not be correct, like last week with the Z steppers. And we're going to use 2 steppers to represent X2 and Y2. So we're not really using the first 2 steppers. This is just a way to test the configuration. They will turn if we hook motors to them, but we don't have any that we want to put out just yet. So there's the first jumper. So we have the stepper over here, which are the TMC 2225s. And I don't have the actual cooling fins on it at the moment, and the reason I do that is because I'm trying to show you that you need to place it on there, but I'm going to actually run it for a moment without the actual cooling fins. So it's red on one side, black on the other, so you just line up the pins and make sure that they're plugged in. There you go. And we got to do the same thing for the y-axis. So we'll pop these out. Place it in here for the jumper. We'll grab another stepper. This one will have cooling on it. And we'll insert it here. So we know that this is Z1, Z2, E0, so it's going to be this one right here. So we're going to have to pop this out, and I don't know which one's going to move for Y and which one's going to move for the actual X, but it'll be interesting to see because I don't know. So let's grab another stepper. We'll do this. So we'll grab it. Make sure that it's seated, and then we have one last one, and I'm guessing it's going to be this one. And I'll check on the chat in just a second. And we'll place this jumper right here. So let's take the last stepper, double check. Line it up and insert it, and make sure that we actually inserted it correctly, because last night I didn't. Okay, move this over. So we're actually going to load the firmware. So right now the jumper is on, but when we're running the steppers, we're actually going to remove it. So I'm going to hook up this one, and hopefully it will be Y. And hopefully this will be the second X. So let me get these seated correctly. And then we have to actually do power. So it's currently disconnected for the power to the wall, so it's not energized. And for steppers, we've got to do here. And we're going to tighten this down for safety. Then we're going to do the other side. The reason I'm doing this particular configuration is because I'm waiting for someone to ask about it, because I know it's going to come up. So let me slide that one in. Notice how I'm doing the red bolts for voltage, and then the ground I'm leaving unmarked. This is the board power supply in this case. The ones that I did previously are for motor power supply. So I'm going to close that for safety. We'll double check to see that it still powers USB. It does. We'll disconnect this, and I'll show you again that it doesn't power it with USB. So that's when we're running off the power supply. So I'm going to put that back on. I'm going to pop out the drive. Hopefully. Maybe I should use my other hand. And I'm going to pop this into here. And then I'll place this in the computer, and I'll check on the chat in just a second. So let's see what we got going on in the chat. Yeah, it's kind of quiet. So let's see. Let's go back over to VS Code. So inside VS Code, we already have it open. We need to set up the actual environment. So I'm going to minimize some of this, and I'm going to go to source core boards.h. I'm going to search on Octopus with the Control H, or Control F, pardon me. I'm going to find the Octopus Pro, because that's the board we're working with. I'm going to note that it's an STM32F4. and I'm going to close out of here, and then I'm going to minimize core source, go to configuration.h, search on motherboard, paste it over the ramps configuration, and then I'm going to change the serial port to -1. That's so we can communicate via USB. And so the other thing we need to do is the steppers. So I'm going to do a Control F and search on A4988. As you can see here, we don't have a 2225. So we're going to use the TMC 2208 because essentially that's what it is. So we're going to post it in here over the previous ones. And then we actually have to find the second X and second Y. So we're going to hit Control / to remove the comment. We're going to paste it here. Then we'll do the same thing for the Y and paste the value for that here. Now I've talked about this enough where if you change something in the advanced configuration, you have to double this value, and I'll show you one last time. So if you go to configuration.h, first thing we're going to search on is going to be 800, so you can see something. So this will bring us to the actual stepper configuration. As you can see, X is enabled, so it's colored different than the second X, so we have to enable something. And the same thing goes for the Y down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the very top of the file, and we're going to search on dual, and you can see dual steppers. Excuse me. So we have to enable this with the Control /. Same thing for the Y. And then we can go back and search on 800 again. And as you can see, now we have those options free. Now notice when I highlight this, these values are tied together. So if you increase the stepping on the TMC 2225, say you want to double it from its default, you'd say 16 is now 32. Over here, you'd have to double this value to 160. If you want to increase the resolution further, like 64, then you would go back over here and you would change this to 320. And so on and so forth, all the way up to 256. You probably shouldn't use 256 or even 125, but it is possible. So now that we've got that sorted out, I'm actually going to move this back down to 32 because, or 16, because we don't really need it at the moment. And I'm going to change this back to 80. And then I'm going to show you how to enable the test debug. So it's TMC_debug. And we need to do monitor driver status. So Control /. And then we need to find the next one, which is down here for TMC debug. And that's so we can use the G code M122 to check the status, because it's going to be helpful. So we've got that all set up. Let's set up the default environment, because right now it's set for a Mega 2560. So we have to go to the INI folder, find the STM32F4, search on Octopus, and you can see that the STM32F446 is our chipset in this case. So we're going to copy that. Now it is subject to change, and there's another one down here for the 429 when that comes out, or if it's already out. So now that we have that, we're going to go back over to platform.io.ini, change the environment, paste it here, and then we're going to actually click the garbage can to clear out the .pio folder. So it'll erase what was previously built. That's inside your build initially. Now we'll click the checkbox. Sometimes this will fail, like it just did now. So we'll click it again. And it's still failing, so there's something going on. So we'll find the first error. Let's see, error unknown motherboard set in configuration.h. So if we go to configuration.h and we go to the top and we search on motherboard, We'll see if we can see it, and it's because I pasted twice, or I pasted over the ramps. So we'll backspace here all the way over to here, and that should in theory take care of it. So we'll clean again, then we'll build, and it may still fail again, but we'll see. So while this is building, I'll check on the chat. Whoop, it just failed again. So this time we'll press the build again, and hopefully this will fix the problem. And it looks like it's building for the moment. So let me check on the chat real quick. Let's see what we got here. Currently 12 p.m. where I am, struggling with a fuse that overheats and breaks, but fixes itself when cooled. You might have to give me a little bit more information about which board type. I'm assuming the Octopus, but it could be something else. And then it might be based on the components you're working with or your power supply. So one of the things I would do is check your power supply with a multimeter, see what voltage is coming out. That might be an issue. And then what components you have and what they're doing. So what they're rated for being their spec sheets. Let's see. I need to run Z motor on 5 volts. 24 volts for X and Y. So I'm not sure if you can run the Z on 5 volts. Depends on the actual stepper and the data sheet. Let's see, you pasted the motherboard wrongly. Yeah, I caught that. Let's see. Your video on the SKR2 clipper really helped me out. However, my Z motors are independent drivers and spread cycle motors are cooking. What gives? That probably means you need to... Well, I don't know which motors you're referring to. Are they TMC 2209s? Are they TMC 2208s? Are they A4988s? Are they DRV 8825s? I need a little bit more information on that one. Let's see, it's an SKR2, so that's the popping fuse. Let's see, I guess the ramps. I'll have to look at that in a second. Let's see, the board gives 11.86 volts. And what voltage are you using for your power supply? The fuses are rated 15 amps. I tested the board, it gives 6 amps, so it seems good. Yeah, so the question I would have would be, what about your power supply might be different? Meaning, take the actual readings with the multimeter to see what power it's putting out. Maybe it's putting out more or less. Yeah, the board for the SKR2 is rated for 24 volts, so it shouldn't be an issue. Unless there's something on the board that might be causing something else. If you can post a picture in the Discord, I might be able to see what's going on. I need to see the power supply as well. But let me load this firmware real quick here. So if we go over to .pio to the build, to the Octopus version 1.0, which is for the Pro in this case, we're going to find our firmware. We're going to right click and we're going to say Reveal in File Explorer. Inside here we already have a drive from our previous load last night. So I'm going to right click and send over the new build. And if it installs correctly, we'll change to this name. So let me take you over to the desktop real quick for the bench. I'm going to pop out the drive. I'm going to put the SD card back in here. And then I'm going to plug this in to flash the firmware. Once it dings, I know it's loaded correctly, so I'm going to unconnect this, remove the actual jumper for this particular stepper configuration and plug it in. So I'll reattach this first so I don't have to touch the board, and then I'll plug it. We'll go over to Fronterface as soon as I can bring it up here because I forgot to open it. Okay, so now I'll bring it up. So we have the board. We don't know if the connection is correct, but it looks like it auto picked it at 15, so let's try it. Looks like it's working. So let's try moving the Y-axis and see what happens. So the Y-axis is the one on the right. So we know it's this stepper over here, so this one hopefully will be X. So let's see what happens. So apparently I picked it correctly, although I've got a little cord in front of it here. I'll show you again. Well, at least I hope I'll show it to you again. I just got an error. So let's see what's going on here. Coil short circuit. So there was a kill command because something unsafe was occurring. Might have been that I was pulling on the cord. So I'm going to power down the board for a second. I'm going to double check all my connections. They look to be okay. And the jumpers look to be in the right position. So I'm going to plug it back in. I'm then going to reconnect after I disconnect. I'm going to do an M122 to see what's going on. And so everything reads okay. So let's go back and try and move the stepper for the X. So it is moving a little loud. It could be that I have a bad connection. So I'm going to disconnect. Hopefully. Well, I'm going to have to power it down. And I'm guessing, hopefully, something's going on here. But this might lead into another way to deal with this. So before I plug this in, I'm actually going to lift this off and look around to make sure everything's connected. Check the bottom for burn marks. I don't see any. And then reconnect it nice and tight. And then plug it in again. And then go back over and try and connect again. Do an M122. See if there's anything out of place. Everything's reading okay. These are the currents currently. We can adjust these possibly. So I don't see anything off. There could be something that I did in the actual firmware that I need to fix, such as the power source. But let's try moving the Y and seeing if this happens. So it's not happening on the Y at all. Let's try the X again. And I'll show you a troubleshooting step if this happens again. So apparently it's not happening anymore. It might be because I reseated the board. But the other technique I was going to show you is actually just taking it. Hang on a second, I'm at the end of the axis apparently. The other step I was going to show you was reversing the actual power to each of the steppers. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if I disconnect here and I disconnect the power, a troubleshooting step you can do when you're on the actual table like this is you can pop this off, take this, move it over here. So now they're going to be backwards. But the reason that you're doing this is to see if the error follows the issue. If they operate where, like, for instance, the error moves from here to here, it's probably your motor. If you do that and it works out fine, that's good, because then you know you have a bad motor. The next thing I would also try is reverse it back to what it was and swap these two positions. meaning take this one, put it here, and put this one here, rerun it, and see if the error moves over here. If that happens, then you have a bad stepper. And always check for burn marks or reseat. In this case, the reseat appears to have solved the issue, but we can double check by actually powering it back up again and reconnecting. So if you're connected and you go to move your Y, you see how it moves perfectly fine? Let's try the X and see if that's fine. So in this case where I had an issue, it had to do with the actual reseat of the stepper. So we solved that for the moment. So let me take a look at all the questions that we got in the chat now. So let me bring it up. I'll bring this to the desktop. The screen might go out after 30 minutes. So if it clicks, I'll restart it, being the camera, because it's on a timer. But let's see what we got going on in the chat now. So let's see. All right, I'll send a picture. You're using TMC 2209s. I've set the current or the run current as less than the motor spec, but they're cooking just from homing the access. Okay, so what you're probably gonna have to show me is, can you put your configuration file in the chat for Discord, and I'll see if I can pull it up and see what's going on, because I need to see what the situation is. So if we were to go over to Discord, let me pull it up so you guys can see it. It's going to take a second to pull over. So let me change the view so you can see. So here it is. So this is the issue with the actual fuse, it looks like. Now I'm not sure what the condition of the fuse is. Maybe it's defective and maybe it needs replacing, possibly. But it does look like there's some damage that, or it doesn't look, you know, pristine, but that might be because you're just prying it out. Let's see what we got going on the board here. So if we're looking at the board, looks like you've got it wired pretty clean. Let me see if I can make this bigger so we can see here. So there's some wiring going on behind here. I don't know what that is. Then we have a wire going over here, which I have to look up what you're doing, but I have a funny feeling that's going to some kind of power thing, but I have to look at the board to see on this particular configuration. And then over here it looks like you've got the heat bed, but I don't see a thermistor for the actual extruder. Oh, it's right there. It's just real dark. So that's your extruder. So that looks okay. Can't zoom in on the wire, but there's something weird that I'm seeing here, but it's probably because I can't see very well from this angle. Then you have something with the multimeter. Okay. So I actually have this version of the printer or something similar to it. It looks like a Tronxy. So I'll show you a couple of techniques to check the actual power out on your power supply. I'm gonna have to move this down so you can see and hopefully not spark anything. But this is the power supply. When it's actually energized, I mark it with 24 volts so I know what's there. You're probably gonna have to click this up and measure this and this terminal with the probes of your multimeter. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of room to do that without disconnecting a lot of things. But when it's powered, it'll tell you what the voltage is on your multimeter. That might give away some information. But let me see how much of this board I can emulate in my configuration. So if I were to go to my desk for a second, let me bring that up. I'm gonna have to break this down real quick. And also find those steppers. And I'll look at the chat in just a second. And I just want to put these back in because I always forget where I put them. And I like to leave the board back to the default configuration so you guys can see what I'm doing, rather than me trying to sort it out from the previous config when you're watching a video. By the way, I just want to shout out to the people that are doing super chats and I'm not seeing them, or on PayPal. It's a great help to offset the costs to do these for you so I can get equipment. And for those that don't know, the actual chipset configuration is written right here for STM32F446. If you had a 429, that's how you would actually sort it out. Fortunately, I wish I had smaller fingers. This will be done in just a moment more. In the older boards, this was a lot easier because these were on the outside on some of the really old ones. Disconnect this so it doesn't fire up and throw a spark into my face. Okay, let me disconnect this real quick. And I gotta pry these things off. Give me a second to clean this up. This is how I keep the board from sliding around on the table. It's non-conductive. It's modeler putty for museums. Okay, let me clean off the board real quick here, and then I'll bring in the SKR board. Which SKR board do you have? Because there's several different flavors now. I don't have all the chipset flavors because I was trying to find a different one, or maybe I do. I get my boards confused. But I'm just trying to clean off putty here real quick. So essentially this stuff comes right off the board. It just takes a little bit of practice. And it's kind of messy when it warms up. Okay, that's out of the way. I'll move the motors out and bring in the access. Let me just grab a board right here. So it's an SKR version 2. Just gotta find the board. Hopefully it's easily found. Now I've got a bunch of them, so I just gotta find it. Okay, it's in a different drawer. Let's see, I think I got it. Hopefully I got the one that's safe. No, it's got a question mark on it. Here we go. So this board version is written right down in here. So I have to zoom in and actually look at it. So let me just place it there for a second so we can see. So it says STM 32F429, I think. Mine's gotten a little bit rubbed raw. So let's get these out of the way. I'll bring in the axis so we can test it. So this is what you're going to do your Z-axis on as soon as I zoom out. There you go. Let me make this so it's easier to see. Okay, let me move the board back in just a second. Just got to secure it down on the table. So essentially, I'm just putting putty on the board again so it doesn't slide around on me, and locking it down to the table. So what we want to know is what's going on in that particular axis that you're having trouble with. I'm going to have to change out these in a second, but that's easy. And also clean off some putty there. So these are actually different terminals. So I'm going to, you said 12 volts. I'll check the chat in just a second. Just have to pry out the power supply. And I'll actually show you how to test it while I'm at it. So if I place the power supply right here, see if I can zoom out a little bit more. Well, I'll move this for the moment. To test the power supply, I'll pop one of these off and then I'll put another one on the board just so it's safe. Actually, I might pop off both so I can show you how to change this. So I'll run this board at 24 possibly. Let me look at the chat. So we got here, your power supply is let's see, Z probe option on my version is 1209. I think you guys are oh yeah, 429. So which version of power do you have? I think I missed it in the chat. You may have said 12. Yeah, it looks like you're talking about 12 or 11.86 is what you're seeing. So let me first show you how to test this real quick. I'm gonna put this on putty for safety so that I don't accidentally cause an issue, and I'm gonna move this over here for safety. But I'm gonna power this up in a second so I can show you how to measure it real quick. I know it seems somewhat basic. You shouldn't power up this way, but here's the multimeter. Let me see if I can see what you're seeing. Gonna turn this to voltage. I got 2 probes. First probe is gonna go here. Next probe is gonna go here. And that's gonna tell us our voltage. And hopefully I'll do this carefully and you won't see sparks. Okay, so it's energized now. So probe 1 and then carefully probe 2. And you can see it's 24.3 volts on my power supply. So let me power this back down for safety. That's one of the things sometimes that can cause issues. Let me get this out of the way. Pop these out. So I'm going to change to a 24 volt power supply in a second. Just gotta pop it in here. Okay, so this one is 12 volts. And the power on this one, I put actual ferrule connectors on for safety. That way I don't accidentally cook something. And then, of course, I marked my board with the actual terminals for the actual power being voltage and ground. So let me move this over and go to the manual real quick because we're using 12 volts. So on the manual, if we go over to the web browser, we're going to have to go back over here and check to see what it is. So it doesn't show up over in here, so we're going to go to repositories, SKR 2 or _2. Click on that. We'll look for the actual hardware for pins. And I just want to see what the setting is. So it says 12 or 24 volts. This is the heat bed, and this is the power. So I'm going to connect that without the power connected on the actual desktop for safety. So essentially I got to find the screwdriver for that real quick. So this is the red terminal for voltage. Let's see if it's one of those disconnect ones. So I'm going to tighten this down, or it's not open yet. Slide that in. Tighten it down nice and tight. Then we'll do the same for this one. Slide that in nice and tight. So these are both now perfectly in there in theory. So now we got to set up the actual stuff over here for the steppers. So I think you said the Y stepper. So let me check the chat real quick. Let's see. My steppers are pretty hot. You're running TMC 2208s. Oh, that's a different person. Let's see. My Z dependent or independent drivers in spread cycle mode. Motors are cooking. So you're in spread cycle mode. So one of the things that could be happening is the power supply setting inside of here. So if you go to configuration.h for advanced, search on 12V, and it might be related to this. So the default is set to 12 for chopper, and you said you're using, let me read through here for what you got. It's going to take me a second to find my place for spread cycle mode. So it might be there's a problem with spread cycle. If you were to use regular stealth chop, does it work correctly? I may have to look at your actual configuration inside of Marlin. If you can post like your configuration in the chat for Discord for your configuration.h and configuration advanced, I can see better. But right now I'm kind of guessing. We might be able to do that offline. But let me try the TMC 2208 question as well while I'm here. So let's see. I mean, I can do the z-axis on the actual linear bar, but it gets kind of messy, and there's two of them. But I think it has to do with a couple of factors that I have to look through. So we got here, heats up a lot. Let's try the other question real quick here. You have a set of 2209s. Let me see if I can grab some and set it up for the y-axis. And maybe we can set up the spread cycle and see what happens on 12 volts. So, do I have TMC 2209s on hand? Yes. I think I do. Okay. So we got to set the jumpers on this correctly. Also verify what you have. In my case, they get scrambled all the time. So I have to read the tops of them. This is a TMC 2209 version 1.2 it looks like. So we're going to set up one and run its spread cycle and see what happens. It's been a while since I've done spread cycle, but I think you have to disable something to run it. So let's try it on the y-axis. And I have to actually go look this up because I know the jumper is probably right here, or it's out here. But let's guess right here for now. Let me see where you are in chat because you might not be seeing what I'm doing. Okay, let's go back over here and check the manual real quick. So we're gonna go back. We'll go to the manual. We'll scroll down and find the config. So that's step dir. So it's one pin off that I was on. Okay, so we're in the right spot there. We have to examine this, make sure that we know about these two pins. And then we have to orient them correctly, which is going to be like this. And so we're good there. Cooling would be a good idea, but at the moment we don't need it. So let me grab this, place it here. Now obviously I can't see what I'm doing from above. Am I in the X? Hang on, let me switch screens. And obviously you're not seeing what I'm doing. I put the driver on, so I switched screens on you, but I'm looking at this, and now I'm plugging this in, but I need to figure out where the X is, then the Y. So in this case, it's right there, and plug that in. So we're good there. When we run it, we have to change this to direct power, which is a 3-pin configuration, which means that it's going to have to move over to here, depending upon which one's USB. Currently USB is the 2 on the bottom, so we'll jump that so we can check the power. So let me grab a USB cord and check this. That looks correct. You can check the other way this connects by going over here it doesn't power. Also got to find a USB TFT for that. So let me grab one out of another board. And then remember to order more of these. Grabbed it out of that board already. Here we go. So I'm going to put a thumb drive in here, place it in the computer, and then we're going to see what we got for configuration. So I'm going to go back over to my desktop for a second. I'm going to go into here. I'm actually going to close this, and I'm going to start from scratch. So if I go over to my downloads folder, I'm going to delete this one because it's got different changes in it. I'm going to right click, extract all, extract. That's going to take a second, and then I'll check on the chat as soon as I clean up a little. So let's see what we got in the chat. Let's see, the bed fuse heats up a lot. The bed loses power after a while. I tested the fuse, it's blown. So, question for you. Do you have ferrule connectors on your bed? And what kind of printer was it? You said it was a Tronxy from the photo. So if I look over here, it looks kind of like a Tronxy. It's a Prusa Tronxy possibly. And I have one in the other room. I can double check the power supply on mine. Give me 1 second to look. Okay, it looks like the Tronxy is 12 volts. So the 12 volt power supply is the same as the Tronxy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see what's going on in this configuration. And I'm going to test it first with what we have. So we'll configure this. We actually just need to plug in. So actually I can actually put the drive in here. Well, no, actually it doesn't work on this configuration, but we'll check to make sure. On the SKR 1.4, you actually get connectivity like a thumb drive. So I want to see if that's here. I don't think it is. So if I go over to here, I don't see a drive. So I know there's no thumb drive. So I'm going to go back over to the desktop for a second so you can see what I'm actually doing. So I'm going to pop this back out. Put it back in here and put it back in the drive. And back on the desktop, we have the file unzipped, so we're going to go over here, open folder, downloads, Marlin 1, Marlin 2, select folder. And so inside of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Marlin folder, source core, boards.h. I'm going to search on SKR 2 and then _2 until I find it. I think it's 2. Can't see it, so it's V2 or _V2. There we go. It's going to be Rev B, so we'll copy that. We'll minimize this and this, go to configuration.h. We'll find the actual configuration here. We'll paste it. We'll set this to -1. And we'll set the default environment first because this is slightly confusing. So if we go back to that actual file for source core boards.h, you can see that the actual chipset can be one of two things. In this case, it's STM32F429. So let's go find that one. So INI STM32F4, search on SKR _V2, I hope, or 2, or _2, and we're going to have a variant down here for it of the 429, so we'll copy that, close out of here, go back to platformio.ini, paste it here, and then we'll go over to the advanced configuration. So in advanced configuration, we're going to search on 800. I'll set the other stuff in a second. I just want to show you what's going wrong. So as you can see, for the Y stepper, it doesn't work at the moment unless we do this. So we're going to search on A4988. We're going to look for the TMC 2209, which is here someplace, I hope. Copy that. Paste it right here. Let's just undo these with Control-Z and then paste again. Same thing goes like before when I was talking about this, but now we can go to the advanced configuration and it shows up. We're not going to change this for the moment, but we're going to look for Stealth Chop in TMC debug. So we'll turn on the TMC debug _debug. So enable the first one, search on TMC _debug again, remove the comment there. So that's set. Now it's going to do sensorless homing in this case. So we need to find sensorless homing, which is right here. Remove the comment. And the one that we're going to be using is this. And it has to be set to 125 for the TMC. So that's how you set that. And then there's a Stealth Chop thing going on here, which I have to find. Let me see if I can look for Stealth Chop. So this might be disabled if you're doing spread cycle. So first we'll set up the power supply. Right now it's set to 12 by default. I'm on 12, so we're good there. So let's go back and actually build this real quick. So I'm going to clean and then build, and hopefully it won't fail, and I'll check on the chat while I'm doing that. Okay. So this is almost built for the 429. Let me double check the screen I'm on. Okay, so what we're going to do is the same thing as before. Go to the .pio. We're then going to find the file for the build inside the SKR 429 folder in this case. Right click. And we're going to reveal on File Explorer. Look for the drive. It's all set. So we're going to copy or send to the drive. Double check it's there. I'm going to close out of this for a second. Go back over to the regular desk. Hopefully the camera won't blink out. Pop this in here, and then I'm going to power it with USB power and hopefully load the configuration. Okay, that's loaded. So I'm going to disconnect the power. Place this over here, and you don't actually have to take out the SD card. So I'll just leave that in here for the moment. I'll plug this back in. There will be no power, so I have to plug in the actual direct power, which is right here. Hopefully the board will go on, which apparently it's not. So I may have just screwed up and plugged in something that doesn't exist, or found an error. Wonder what that issue is. So let's fix this real quick here. So I'm going to put a ferrule connector on this in just a second. I just want to make sure where it came from, which is in this case this one. So let me get my strippers out real quick. And I gotta strip this knot over the board. Let me see if I can get a ferrule connector to plug in there. So normally I'd use a different connector, but I don't have one on me. So essentially, what I'm doing is this. And then I'm going to basically tie it back inside as soon as I clean out whatever was in there before. And then slide that in. And tighten it down. Hopefully doing this safely. So I'm going to have to be very careful powering this up. You might see sparks if I screwed up. Hopefully that won't be the case. Okay, now it powers up. So now we can go back over to Pronterface. And inside Pronterface, obviously we're set on the wrong COM port. We don't know what it is. So what we need to do is figure out how to deal with this. So we're going to go over to the work desk. We'll do Device Manager. And then we'll see what it is. It's 5. So let me bring this up so you can see. And I'll connect. I'll do an M122 to see what's going on. It says it's unknown, so I may have made a mistake enabling something. Or the firmware didn't load. So let's disconnect, reconnect, double check. And apparently something's not enabled, so let's go check the firmware. So if we go over to, well, let's check the drive first. So I'm going to power down the system. I'm going to check to see that I'm on that. Disconnect this, pop the drive, put it in here, and then place this in the computer. Inside the computer, we're going to go to our desktop real quick. We'll open a folder, we'll check on the drive, and there's the issue. So the firmware didn't load. So the question is, why didn't it load? So, as you can see, it built correctly, or as far as we know, but it's not reading it. So I'm going to delete firmware.cur. Or actually, I'm going to undo that with Control Z if I can, which I can't. I'm going to plug that back into the computer of the drive. Make sure it's fully seated. I'm going to pull this, put it on USB power, load it. I'm going to hit the reset button. Then I'm going to pop this out and check the drive again. Might be that this drive is no good for this configuration, in which case I have more. So let's go back over to the computer and see what's going on. So it's not loading. That's the issue here for me. So the question is, why is it not loading? So we're going to delete it. We'll format the drive. We'll do it to the default FAT32. Then we'll go back over and try and load this again. So if we're on VS Code, go to Explorer, right click, send to D drive. It's there. If this doesn't work, we swap drives next. So let's see what we've got going on here. So we'll go to the workbench, pop this out, pop it in here, power it. Not sure it loaded, so I'm going to disconnect this, place this back on the drive to check the status, and then if this is the case, it's a bad drive, possibly. So let's see what we got on the computer. So it didn't load. So let me grab a different drive real quick. Okay, this is the same type of drive, but hopefully a different one. So I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to go back over to my folder. It says cur on this one. Don't know if that's for the SKR 1.4. So I'm going to copy the other file over. So let's see, reveal in File Explorer, right click, send to the D drive. Check the drive, pop the drive out. Go to the workbench, pop it in. And if this is the case, I might try another drive, and after that, there might be something going on with the board. But it's flashing different. So it might be the drive. So let's go over to the computer and see what happened. So if we go back over here, open the folder, go to the D drive, it loaded. So we're good there. So I'm going to pop this back out, go back over to the workbench, and that drama is over with. And I got to order more drives, I guess. So I'm going to place that in there. I'm going to power this down for a second, remove the jumper and move it over here because we're using TMCs. Plug that back in, plug in the power, and let's go over to Prunterface and hopefully see what's going on. So connect, then we're going to do M122. We get a readout. As you can see, it's okay. So let's try and move it. Whoops, got to move the right axis. So it moves. Let's try homing it. Homing's not going so well. Interesting. So there might be a setting that I need to change for that, or I have the jumper in the wrong position. So let's see if we can go outwards. So let's go the other way. Let's try homing again. So it's set to a sensitivity that might be an issue. So let's disconnect. Disconnect the power. And let's examine what's going on. It's been a while since I've set this up, so power's correct. This might be loose. That might be one factor. Down in here, we have the jumper at the second from the bottom. So let's go over to the desktop for a second. Go to the manual. UART mode is correct. It's the second one over. So that looks correct. It could be that I have a bad stepper. But let's check to see what I set it to in VS Code. So configuration.h. Second one is TMC 2209. That's correct. Advanced configuration. Let's go to the very top. Search on 800. Looks like we're set there. Let's see what we got going on here. Stealth chop. Voltage should be fine. Settings here. So we're working with the Y axis. For some reason it's not enjoying that. So let's see what we got going on here. Homing is sensorless. We could probably crank this down to 100 and see if that changes anything. It's not normally what you do, but let's click the checkbox, build it, and see. There also might be a bug inside the software we don't know about. And I'll check on the chat in a second. Let me pop out the drive and plug it in while this is going on. Because if we roll back a build, I'm guessing we're not going to see this issue, which means that it might be a bug. So let me bring up the chat because Yeah, it definitely was a SD card. Okay, so let's pop this out in just a second. So up here, let's find it. Right click, reveal in File Explorer, right click again, send to, and the drive is not showing up because I don't have it in here just right. There we go. Right click, send to, it's in the D drive, pop that out, pop it back into the computer for the motherboard. I'll show you what I'm doing. So if I go over to here, I just put the drive in. I'm gonna move this back over to USB power. Check to make sure it's flashing. We'll double check it because earlier it didn't go well. So we'll plug this into the computer, double check. And it looks like it loaded because it's only a couple minutes past, or 1 minute past. So I'll pop that out. I'm plugging it back into the actual board. And I'm going to set the power to direct power. Plug that back in and plug in the power, which is right here. And then we'll go over and try this again, see what's going on. So connect, M122. And it's giving us a funky response now. So something is wrong, and I think you guys can figure that one out, or I'll show you. So I'm gonna power it down. Let you look at the board real quick. Got one of these. Has to be in there. Plug that back in. Plug this back in. Then I'll reconnect after disconnecting. Do the M122. And it says OK. So let's try homing. So there's still a homing issue. This I think has to do with firmware. It might be Marlin introduced it. So what we could do is roll back to the previous version and figure it out. But let's see if we can do that real quick. So I'll bring up the screen so you can see what I'm doing. So if we go over here, we have versions, but we can go over to download. And then what you can do is you can click on firmware and you can click on Marlin. And then you can click over here and we can find tagged builds. So here's the previous version. We can click code, download. The other thing is we can check for bugs, but this is just so we can see what's going on. So I'm going to power down the board while this is going on. And it looks like it's already downloaded, but we got to extract it. So we'll right click, extract all, extract. And then we'll do the exact same setup, but we won't use the exact same files. So I'm going to click over here, I'm going to close this folder. I'm going to minimize this for a second. Sorry, I got off on a tangent on this. Now I'm curious as to what's occurring. And I'm probably going to configure this super fast, or at least tell you that I'm going to do it super fast. Let me just clean up my desktop a little here. Okay, so we're going to go over here, click on the open folder, downloads. We're going to go to 9.2. Whoop, I screwed up. So let's close it. Do it again. Open downloads. Go into the second one, then select folder. So hopefully the platform IO is still in the buffers. So let's paste that. No, it's not. So we'll Control Z. So I'm going to go to the INI. I'm going to go to STM32F4. I'm going to search on SKR underscore V2 or 2 or underscore 2. Find the chipset that we're working with. Hopefully I copied the right one. So it's around here someplace. Big Tree Tech SKR2. That's odd. Oh, it's not in this version, so I can't check it. So this was introduced later, so there's no way for me to roll back and check this one. I have to check on a different board, or what we can do is this. We'll go over to the actual configuration. We'll actually go back to the Marlin website. Down here we can go to reporting an issue, and then we can say TMC 2209, press enter, and then we can look through here and see if there's any related issues. Now some of these issues you probably know how to solve already, but we'll do another search on sensorless homing. Opened 4 days ago. There's some stuff about safe homing. False trigger, that might be similar to it. Allows separate sensitivity for homing, probing, stall guard. So apparently there might be an issue on this particular board. And unfortunately we can't roll back, so let's look at somebody else's issue. They're saying use bug fix to check to see if it's working. That's the version they're working on. They're basically talking about the behavior. So there's not a lot of information in here yet. There's 0 comments from anybody else. So let's see if we can find something on SKR2. So it's starting to look like there might be, well, that's really old. And obviously the version's different. And it's in bug fix, which means that it's outside the norm. We're looking for something relatively new, and these are both open, but the stepper is different. So it is possible it's an issue. And it looks like someone's talking about it for Core XY. So that was open on November 5th, which seems like a previous build. Let's see if there's anything on 2.0.9.3. So I guess we can't search too much on that. So let's just go back. So sensorless homing, it looks like there's an issue. I have to swap boards because this board doesn't exist in 2.0.9.2, but it might be in bug fix, which kind of makes it useless because that's the current stuff that's being developed. So I don't know how much more I can go back with this problem, but I can try it on other boards to see if it's working. So let's try doing it on the SKR Turbo, and that'll only take a few seconds to set up. So let me go over to the workbench and break this down real quick. Hopefully it'll work in the other one. Granted, I've showed how to do it about 100 times, so it theoretically should work. The other thing that might be an issue is on the underside of here, if there's a burn mark, this might be damaged, which I don't see. So let me grab this drive, get the other one out of the way, get this out of the way. So all I'm doing now is I'm changing actual chipsets. It's a similar board or architecture, but it's the LPC 1768 or 9, depending upon if it's a turbo. So it's completely different from the STM configuration, but it's quick to change as long as I can put things back together quickly. And it's a board I know it worked on. And if it did work on that board, when we do it, then we know that it's something to do with this particular architecture and how they set it up, and I'd have to find the older board and try it again. So let me grab that board real quick. So here's the SKR 1.4. I'm going to lock this down on the table so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So let's go to the manual and check this out real quick. Hopefully this won't be so much fun. We go to Big Tree Tech, scroll to the very top. SKR 1.3.4 manual. Inside the manual, there's going to be some settings. So UART mode, it's saying the second one from the top. And if we're not doing sensorless homing, it says to do cut the diag pin, but we are, so let's do that. So let's go over to the workbench real quick and get this set up. Might be expecting a different stepper. Looks like I already had it set up. So that's second from the top. This is correct. Plug it in, and then it's funky over here. So there's an X right there. Power is going to be fun, so I got to double check it. So let's go over here. Go back. Quick way to do this is go to the hardware pins. And you can see that the direct current is right here for 12 or 24 volts. So let's go back over and change that. It's really weird to me that they reversed the power, unless I reversed it, but it looked like the board was powered, so that's not the issue. So I've got to work this in. That's red, I'm red. Now I'm going to do the same for ground. tighten it down. We're gonna have to put the drive in the actual reader because we changed the actual configuration. Plug this in, go back over to the desktop, and I'll show you how to do this quick. So we're gonna go back over here, find the folder for, or the file for the configuration that's not in there. It's TMC, there it is. So we're gonna be working, I think, with, I have to double check the actual chipset. So we're gonna have to zoom in on it on the desktop because I don't want to flip the board over. So this is what we're gonna do. So down in here we have the configuration for the actual board, but I can't see it. So I'm gonna do this. Pick it up, and it will say turbo underneath if it's turbo, but it's not. So it's the actual 1.8, or excuse me, 1768. So let's go back over here. 1768, we'll copy that. Hopefully this won't be a total mess. We'll go over to Platform IO, paste it right here. I did change this file around, it looks like, so let's see what's going on with that. So Marlin, configuration.h, search on motherboard. Looks like we're back to default, so I got to search for it. So core boards, search on SKR_1, and it's right here because we're not using the turbo allegedly. So we'll close out of this. We'll go back over to configuration.h. We'll paste this here. We'll change the actual. Oh, am I in a different version? That's awesome. I'm in an older version. So let's do this. That's why I'm confused. So close folder, don't save. Go back to the other version, open folder. We're gonna go to the downloads 2.0. We'll open this up and we'll go to Platform IO as soon as it lets me. And it's going to be LPC 1768. Then we'll go back over to configuration. We'll jump back up to here, search on motherboard. Sorry, I'm doing this out of order. We're going to have to change this. So source, core, boards.h. We're going to then search on SKR_1. 4, hopefully, and we'll have to go up with that, or we'll go to the top of the file, click here and here, and then try this. There's the one we're looking for. It's under LPC 1768, so we'll go to configuration.h. paste it. All the rest is the same, so we'll clean and then we'll build. I'll check on the chat in just a second. Yeah, I'll be checking on your config in a couple minutes. Right now I'm trying to see if this is an issue board over board. Now, the actual configuration in this case, I want to change this back by hitting Control-Z. And it's not working, so I'll do 125. And I actually want to rebuild this, so I'm going to clean it. And then I'm going to build it again. The reason is that's the numbers I normally use. So it should be the same in theory. And hopefully it hasn't changed anything over here. But you can see changing configurations is pretty easy when you're in the same version. Okay, so let's go to core, or I'm sorry. Let's minimize some of this stuff down. So build, then we're going to find the bin, right click, reveal in File Explorer, double check the drive, go back, right click, send to D drive, double check again, pop the drive. We're going to go back over to the desktop in a second. Insert this here, and we're going to do it from USB power first. So I think that's USB power. And it looks like it loaded. So we're going to power this down, move the jumper over here, plug this back in, and then we'll plug in the main power as soon as I find it. There we go. So let's energize the board. We'll go over to Pro interface, and we don't know what the actual configuration is for these COM ports, so we're going to have to go back over to the desktop, do device manager. When device manager comes up, we'll click on ports, it's 3. We'll close this, change this to 3, and then I'll bring it so you can see everything again. Transition, now connect. It says it's online. We'll do M122. It says that it's okay, so let's try and home. So it looks like there's an issue with that particular board. That's why we're seeing that issue. There might be something different about the 429 processor that they haven't fixed yet, and that's why I'm struggling with it like other people. So that may be an issue we have to examine, or someone will need to open a bug and say, hey, I've got an issue over here. I may have the 446 board, but I don't know how reliable it is. So let me find that real quick, and maybe we can examine that issue. I think it's 446. And I'm referring to the actual processor in the center when I'm saying that. So let me break this down real quick. Because we know the stepper now is good. We just don't know what's going on with that particular configuration. And we can't roll back to see it because it didn't exist. So maybe we can see what's happening in the other processor if I have that board. So I'll show you how to check the board real quick. Let me just put this board away real quick and see if I've got the other one on hand. So this is the 446 board. So let's see if we've got the other one. Okay, I've got an older board here. This one might smoke, so we're gonna have to look at the actual fix for this, because this is the one I got that might be defective. I put a question mark over here, so we might smoke a board, but let's see what the information is. If you look on the back, it says that it passed QA, which I don't know what that means. But let's zoom in on the board for a second. And what we're looking for is first the processor. So you can see it's STM407. And on this one, it's STM429. So what do we need to know about this board? There's something in this area I think we have to check on. And it's been a while since I've had to check it. So let's see if we can see if it gives us an answer. So I can't read that very well. Let me see if I can read the other one. but there's something about that. Yeah, it's HY something. So it might be a bad idea to do this one unless I can pick that out. So let me get a magnifying glass out because I can't see. Some of this I have to do from memory. That's why I'm confused about stuff. But I gotta get some light on this so I can see. Apparently I'm not able to read it with my current configuration. So I'm probably gonna have to research this one because I'm nervous to power up this board because I know it might cook. And I know it's not my bad board, but they aren't real clear on this. So I need to research this one before I make a mistake and cost myself a board that I know functions. But I need to verify that before I do anything. Because there's a particular serial number that has to be on it or name on it. And I can't see it yet until I find a way to highlight it. So I will be in chat a little bit later today. I've got to close caption something in over 100 languages. So for those of you that have come by tonight, thank you very much. For those that are tipping in the chat, thank you very much. And for my patrons, thank you very much. And I'll catch up with you all after I get this sorted out. And maybe we'll do it Friday as another portion of this live stream. Or I might do it Saturday, depending upon how quickly I find the answer. So everyone take care, be safe, get vaccinated if you're not, and wear a mask until this hellscape is over.